I thought I might lose him. And I thought about all the things that he'd gone through and knowing that this was a possibility. It was very hard for Greg to enjoy anything he was doing. And I think he just said, I don't want to live like this anymore.
Racing was my life from the time I was 5 years old, 4 or 5 years old. It's all I ever did. It was just something that allowed me to just be by myself, and something I felt like I loved it from the first time I did it.
Well, when Greg was born, I was working in the motorcycle industry, and part of my job was to go to races and to represent the company. And I always took him; he was excited to go.
And I'd be riding around the pits and kind of watching and learning from all these pros that I looked up to my whole life. So guys that I grew up watching that I was around since I was really, really young. So kind of started from there, and just eventually I was racing at the same tracks and doing the same thing essentially.
I was happy for him. When Greg started to get more serious about racing, I thought, well, this is great. It's something we can do together. It's something that we can gets us out on a Saturday and a Sunday. And I like working on bikes, so I love to do the maintenance on it and make sure it was 100% and teach him a few things about the basic maintenance. He was never a real hands-on maintenance guy, but he preferred the riding aspect, which I understand totally. But I didn't mind, making sure the bikes ran well. But it was something that we, that we could do, and it was something that he could grow with.
Motocross is one of the gnarliest sports on the face of the earth, right? It's one of the hardest things you can do, and a lot of people don't realize that how tough it is. And it's not taking away from another sport, but it's pretty hard. Like, it's hard to, you're maxing your heart rate out for 35 minutes at the pro level, and you're breaking bones. You're always riding injured at some point. It's tough, and I realized, like, we don't talk about head injuries or mental health. I mean, we just stuff it down, and we realize, hey, like, we're not going to talk about that. My dad actually stopped coming to the races with me when I was probably in my late teens. He just basically told me it wasn't any fun, and it wasn't fun anymore because of how I was being. I was being angry. I was throwing my helmets. I was just really upset, and it wasn't fun to be around. And that at the time, I just said, "Who cares? Like, I don't need you anyways." And I'd go by myself, or whoever would come with me. And it became pretty tough to be around each other because I was being a certain way, and I wasn't myself. And I think he knew that, but we didn't know why. We just thought maybe it was, just being a teenager, or being, just growing up, maturing.
Well, just his lack of being able to appreciate where he was, like having fun, racing, but he would get so depressed over a minor incident at the track, and it would affect his mood, and he would get angry about things that I would say it's no big deal. I couldn't understand why he would get so upset about things, and I found out later that it was part of what is going on with him is these major swings in his mood and his subsequent behavior.
I started to notice my symptoms, early 20s or late teens. I started to notice that things were different about me. I thought it was maybe depression and just not enjoying what I was doing anymore, or people around me, or things like that, or decisions I'd made.
But as he got older, when things should have been easier for him and easier for him to cope with because he was more mature, he was still having trouble dealing with issues at the track in his life. It was hard to figure out what was going on. So I wasn't really aware too much of bipolar or anything like that, and so it was a question of starting to get him involved with professionals to see what we could do.
Nothing made me happy, essentially, and that's something that I really noticed, is that even doing well at a race, I wasn't happy. It was like, well, I didn't do this or I didn't do that, or whatever the case may be. So I just didn't like being somewhere where I knew deep down I loved being there, but I couldn't really feel that.
To be honest, I'd heard the term bipolar, I'd heard the term manic depressive, I've heard these things. And it seemed like, I'll be honest, it seemed to me like everybody was bipolar. It was like the current thing to be or something. I had a tendency to just dismiss it, and until I started to delve into it. And it is a serious condition. The hardest part about watching Greg go through this was watching him suffer. There was nothing I could do. I couldn't tell him to get over it. I couldn't tell him that it wasn't a big deal. He should just relax. And you can't tell them, people who suffer from this, to just get over it. They can't. And I didn't know what to do. The only thing I could do was just be there. And just be there when he needed somebody, or when he was going off, just to not yell, not get upset, just be there.
I realized, I was constantly up and down. It was this crazy roller coaster that I just couldn't get off, and I couldn't control it. I couldn't, I was trying to control the way I was controlling with different things and outside influences and external, stuff, and it wasn't helping. And I realized, like, this is really deep, and I need to get some help because I'm by myself. My family's always been around, but I was pushing everybody away. So I realized pretty quickly that I was kind of just here, and I wasn't getting any better.
The incident where Greg tried to take his life, I was out in the driveway doing something, and his stepmom had come out and said that Greg was in his room, and she said, "I think he's sleeping." And I went in there for some reason. I don't know why. I said, I'll go in and check on him. And I found the note. And I just grabbed him and sat him up and put my fingers down his throat and made him throw up as much as I could.
It was, looking back, it was pretty crazy to think about it, to think that I sat there for 20 minutes or something and just took all these pills and realizing what it would do, and there was really not much going back. I'm not a big gun guy. I'm not a big anything else. So I knew this was the best way to do it. I also wanted to be I thought it through enough to the point that I didn't want it to be messy. And then I just went and laid in my bed and I wrote a note, just because I knew that they would find me eventually, and that would be my final words. And I said sorry and for who I was and what I'd done, and this is what I wanted to do.
And Linda called the ambulance, and I just rocked him, and he just kept saying he was sorry. And he said, "Let me go."
I wanted to go. That's how committed I was to it all. And it was, I almost didn't want him to save me, because I was so committed to the idea of that being my fate.
And I wouldn't. I just kept holding on. I just kept holding on to him and talking to him and wondering where the hell the ambulance was.
He just would never let me go. He would never let me go, and that's why he's my best friend. I wanted to go so bad, and he wouldn't. I don't really remember that, him saying that or me saying that, but I know he wouldn't, and that's why he's everything to me. I realized at the time that I had bigger things to worry about, and my mental health was one of them, and I took about 6 years off.
This is how Greg was able to cope with this condition. He was referred to a doctor at CAMH, and he was excellent. Greg went to see him. He had the blood work done, which determined Greg's lithium levels. And this is one of the issues apparently with bipolar and people with depression. And his were way off.
I didn't go to any races for the first few years. I didn't really do anything, didn't watch anything on TV, just stayed away from it all, because I just felt like part of me thought that that was the reason why I was the way I was, even though I found out now that it wasn't. But I just wanted to get away from it because I felt like I didn't know who I was without racing, and because that's all I'd ever done. I started to do certain things. Like, I got really into cycling for a long time, and I found that cycling, especially at a certain level, you're working really hard, you're suffering essentially, and it's something that I knew that I had control of, and I wasn't suffering mindlessly. I wasn't just suffering and in my own dark space without any light at the end of the tunnel. I knew it was going to be over, whether it was a big climb or a big effort or something. I knew that it was going to be over, and I felt like that was a way to train my mind and a way to train myself to realize, like, even during an episode of dealing with bipolar disorder and dealing with the downward spiral that it can have, I knew it was always going to go back up.
He just seems to understand more, and that has really helped him when somebody explains it to him what he's going through. And it's not his dad. It's a highly trained professional who has told him this and has told him, Greg, you're not the only person. There's thousands and thousands of people. Like
that, always that time of year came around, and then April would come, and I started thinking about bikes again, and it was something that I started to think about a lot more, and I started to really get the kind of the itch for it again and enjoy it, because enjoy the thought of it. Started watching the races again, and watching Supercross and Motocross, and watching my friends out racing, and I just felt like there was something missing, and I realized kind of what it was, and it was riding motorcycles essentially.
Attaboy. Let's go. Attaboy.
I think mental health in general is hard to talk about with athletes, especially because we're looked at, or you always have to be at your best, and it's something that you don't really talk about injuries or anything with anyone, because it looked at like a weakness. We stuff it down, and we realize, hey, we're not going to talk about that, and I realized that it's something we needed to discuss, and I thought if anyone could do it, maybe I could, because I'd been there, and I'm on my way back.
I'm proud of him. I'm proud of him to have come through this. It's sort of something that I've been trying to tell him all his life, and I keep repeating it, and it's such a trite phrase, but it's basically, don't sweat the small stuff. You are a good person. You are going to be a good husband if you want to be. You're going to be a phenomenal father. Just keep going. Just get on with it. Don't worry about anything in the past. There's nothing you can do about that. Just don't feel bad about what you did or what happened or anything that's happened. Just move forward.
It's like a rebirth. It's something that I've worked really hard to come from, and I feel like my life is just starting. It's something that I've hit the very bottom, and I hit the definition of rock bottom, in my opinion, and I've bounced back, and I've come back, and it's I'm not gonna light the world on fire, but I'm here to help people and help myself, and just be the best version of myself, and I would call it revival.